He had 700 wives, 300 concubines, gold so abundant that silver was considered worthless in his kingdom, tossed aside like common stone. He built a temple so magnificent that kings traveled from distant lands just to see it with their own eyes. He was the wisest man who ever lived, gifted understanding directly from God himself. And yet, at the end of his life, this man wrote something so raw, so devastating, that it has confused and comforted readers for nearly 3,000 years. He looked back on everything he built, everything he owned, everything he conquered, and he wrote one word to describe it all: meaningless, vanity, a chasing after wind. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will understand exactly what broke a king who had everything, and more importantly, what he discovered on the other side of that despair, because it changes everything about how you should be living your life right now. Solomon became king of Israel as a young man, and almost immediately, God appeared to him in a dream and asked him a question most people could never answer honestly. What do you want? Not what do you need. What do you want? And Solomon, instead of asking for wealth or long life or the destruction of his enemies, asked for wisdom. He asked for an understanding heart so he could govern his people justly. God was so moved by this request that he gave Solomon not only wisdom beyond any man before or after him, but also the riches and honor he never even asked for. This is where the story usually stops in Sunday school: the good king who chose wisdom over wealth. But that is not where Solomon's story ends. That is only where it begins. Because wisdom, real wisdom, does not protect you from making devastating choices. It only makes you painfully aware of the consequences afterward. Solomon used his wisdom to build an empire. He built the great temple in Jerusalem, a structure so intricate and costly that it took 7 years and tens of thousands of workers to complete. He built his own palace, which took 13 years, even longer than the house of God. He accumulated horses by the thousands, chariots by the hundreds, and gold that arrived by the ton every single year from trade routes he controlled across the known world. The Queen of Sheba herself heard rumors of his wisdom and wealth, traveled a grueling journey to see if the stories were true. And when she arrived, the text says she was left breathless. There was no more spirit in her. That is how overwhelming Solomon's kingdom had become. But here is the part nobody talks about enough. Solomon married 700 women, many of them foreign princesses, for political alliances. And the scripture is blunt about what happened next. His wives turned his heart, not overpowered it, not tricked it, turned it, slowly, gradually. The wisest man in the world, the man who could discern truth from lies with terrifying precision, allowed his heart to drift, piece by piece, marriage by marriage, until in his old age, he was building shrines to foreign gods. The man who wrote Proverbs about the fear of the Lord being the beginning of wisdom ended up compromising the very foundation he preached. This is not a story about a monster. This is a story about erosion, about how the smartest people you know can still lose themselves one small compromise at a time, until one day they look up and do not recognize the life they built. And this is exactly why the Book of Ecclesiastes exists. Most scholars believe Solomon wrote it later in life, likely after decades of excess, after the wives, after the wealth, after the failed shrines, and the slow spiritual decay. It reads like the confession of a man who tried everything human civilization has ever offered and found himself empty at the finish line. Listen to how he opens it. Meaningless, meaningless, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. This is not poetic exaggeration. This is a king telling you, from first-hand experience, that he built vineyards, gardens, parks, reservoirs. He bought slaves and servants. He owned herds and flocks beyond anyone before him in Jerusalem. He accumulated silver and gold, the treasure of kings and provinces. He acquired singers, male and female, and all the pleasures a man's heart could desire. He denied himself nothing his eyes wanted. And then, in his own words, he turned to survey everything his hands had done. And what did he find? Nothing was gained under the sun. Everything was smoke. Now here is where most people misread Solomon, and where I think this video actually becomes useful to your life instead of just an interesting Bible story. Solomon was not saying life is worthless. He was saying, life built entirely on accumulation is worthless. He tried wisdom alone and found it brings grief. He tried pleasure alone and found it hollow. He tried work and legacy alone and realized he would die, and someone else, maybe a fool, would inherit everything he built. He tried wealth alone and discovered that the more you have, the more people you attract who want to consume it. He is not condemning wisdom, pleasure, work, or wealth individually. He is condemning the belief that any one of them, or even all of them combined, can fill the space in a human being that was never designed to be filled by things. And this brings us to the ending of Ecclesiastes, the part that changes the entire meaning of everything that came before it. After chapter after chapter of despair, after admitting that even the wisest man and the greatest fool share the same fate in death, Solomon lands on his final conclusion. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. That's it. After 700 wives, after mountains of gold, after temples and palaces and gardens and singers, and every pleasure available to a human being in the ancient world, the final answer this man arrives at is startlingly simple. Not more accumulation, not more accomplishment. A right relationship with God and a quiet, faithful obedience in the small things of daily life. Think about what that means for you right now in your own life. You are probably not going to have 700 wives or a temple built in your name, but you might be chasing your own version of Solomon's mistake. Maybe it is the next promotion that you believe will finally make you feel secure. Maybe it is the next relationship, the next purchase, the next milestone you are certain will quiet the restlessness in your chest. Solomon already ran that experiment for you, at a scale none of us will ever reach, and he came back with the results. It does not work. Not because ambition or love or beautiful things are evil, but because they were never built to be the foundation. They make wonderful additions to a life. They make terrible foundations for one. There is a reason this book has survived nearly 3,000 years, translated into every language, read by kings and paupers alike. It is because every generation rediscovers the same truth Solomon discovered in his palace surrounded by riches. The ache does not come from having too little. It comes from expecting the wrong things to satisfy an ache that only faith and simple faithfulness were ever meant to answer. Solomon spent decades learning this the hard way, through excess, through compromise, through watching his own heart drift from what he knew was true. You do not have to spend decades learning it the way he did. You get to read his final words today as a warning and as a gift, and decide right now what you are actually building your life on top of. So here is the question I want you to sit with after this video ends. If you achieved everything you are currently chasing, the promotion, the relationship, the number in your bank account, Would you end up writing your own version of Ecclesiastes? Or are you building on something that will still hold weight the day everything else is stripped away? Solomon had the answer to that question. It just cost him almost everything to find it. If this video meant something to you, stay a moment longer, because there is more of Solomon's wisdom waiting, and it might be exactly what you need to hear next.